Welcome to Microbiome Minutes. My name is Whitney Kell. I'm a certified coach, and I'm excited to bring to you an expert in gut health, Kiran Krishnan. We're excited to bring you his over 15 years of research and development. He currently has 13 clinical studies going on around the country, and he's lectured to over 50 people in 50 groups of medical conferences in the last 12 months to train health professionals, our healers, in our system that are here to help us on how to look at the gut differently. Is that right, Kiran?
Absolutely, you got it. Yeah, I mean, we all know that the microbiome is so important for success in healthcare, and I have the privilege of being able to lecture to large groups of doctors and functional medicine practitioners to help them understand the role of the microbiome.
Yes, and it's the opposite of doing antibiotics too. It's probiotics is what we're really talking about, right?
Yeah.
Which is new. You know, the topic we're going to talk about today, which I'm super excited about because I recently went on a trip to Mexico, and all my friends got sick. But because I've been taking probiotics for quite some time, and I've used yours. Yours are fantastic. I did not get sick. And we also went on a cruise ship, and I did not get sick. So I wanted to have you talk a little bit about traveling, probiotics, and how when we travel to India, or, most people get sick in India, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Would you share a little bit about your experience, what your knowledge is and wisdom around travel and how we can protect ourselves? And then I want to tie it back to your study that you're doing with the military, if you would be so kind.
Sure. Yeah. So, I travel personally more than anybody else I know. I fly about 300,000 miles a year, and I visit at least 10 to 15 different countries each year, lecturing and doing all of this. So I have to be very concerned about protecting my gut as I travel. So one of the first things to note is the moment you leave your natural home base, within 24 hours of being in a new environment, your microbiome can already change. Because of the environment that you're in, the types of food you're exposed to, the water, the air, all of those factors can basically kind of throw your microbiome into a little bit of a wobble. And that wobble makes your microbiome a little bit more susceptible to new bacteria or viruses entering in and causing infection. And these are things that are common in these other places. We just never encounter them. Right? So we don't have natural protection against them. Now, if you're taking an effective probiotic, and some of the best ones to take when you travel are like Saccharomyces boulardii, is a really effective probiotic in preventing traveler's diarrhea, or the spores like in the megaspore that we have, because these types of bacteria and probiotic fungus, in the case of Saccharomyces boulardii, can actually compete with those invading bacteria and viruses and kind of knock them out. So if you stay up on the dose, like let's say the bottle says 2 caps a day as like your daily dose. When I travel, I would take 2 or 3 caps 2 or 3 times a day. I would actually bump up the dose quite significantly, because most of these products are perfectly safe to go at high levels. And when your body is undergoing that kind of stress, they can be really protective in that way. And so I keep sending in these probiotics that can go in there, look around for any invading or incoming bacteria or viruses that aren't normal part of your flora. That could typically, what they would do is they would come in, they would settle in, they would start producing toxins to try to establish a little bit of real estate for themselves. And that toxin production is what causes the diarrhea, the indigestion, and all the awful symptoms that people get when they get food poisoning or traveler's diarrhea. So when you have competitive bacteria, they are sitting there that can read the rest of the microbial environment. And when they see these microbes coming in, they immediately start competing against them and attacking them. You will have that kind of ongoing protection, that police, if you will, in your gut. So if you're going to travel, make sure you're throwing in some gut police to watch out, because there's going to be already some disruption to your microbiome because you're in a new place. That makes your microbiome more vulnerable. So imagine if it's your your house or something like that, and you're moving into a new environment and you're already shaking up the walls a little bit, makes it more vulnerable for people or bad people to come in. You need to have some sort of security or police around it to make sure you're warding off some of those things that can cause you illness. And you can very easily prevent most issues when you're traveling if you just dose up on some of these probiotics ahead of time and during your trip as well.
Fantastic. And just to go back to your metaphor around the garden, you're basically, it's not weed killer.
Right.
But in a way, it is. You're creating so much healthy bacteria that if something tries to get in there that's not healthy, it's going to head out or it's going to be dissipated. How does that work, out of curiosity? What does happen?
So a lot of it is something called competitive exclusion. It's really that the idea is that there's a finite amount of real estate in your gut, right? So, and every square millimeter of your gut is occupied by a bacteria or virus of some sort that typically should be part of your normal constitution. Now, for another microbe to come in, it has to knock out one of your natural native bacteria in order to take hold and cause illness. But if you have really strong populations, they can basically crowd out or outcompete that incoming bacteria and basically knock them out, and you poop it out a few hours later and you never knew you were even exposed to it. So it's a big ecological battle. So the more of those kind of protective police-like probiotics that you can put in that can look around and seek these invading microbes and then compete against them and get them out, the safer you're going to be in protecting yourself when you travel.
Fantastic. And, I want to tie it back to the kids, because I think, obviously the future of the children on this planet are a prediction of our future of their health as we age. And the human beings that are here, and we're losing more and more we don't have the same access to this kind of bacteria now in our soils, correct? I mean, that's but my question for you was around mission trips. We were talking about that, and kids who go on mission trips. What's the age that you'd suggest? And I have a direct question for you. Do you give your kids probiotics? And what is the age that you suggest they start? And let's say someone was going on a mission trip. What would be your suggestion?
Yeah, so in fact, my kids started taking probiotics at the age of around 6 months, and they have ever since. My daughter's 5, my son is 8. They travel a lot with me, so they each fly almost 100,000 miles a year themselves at that age, and we go to places like Cambodia and Laos and Thailand and Europe. So I'm exposing them to a lot of different areas. India, they've each been to India 2 or 3 times now. And fortunately, knock on wood, they haven't been sick yet. And a lot of that is because as we start preparing for the trip a couple of weeks before, I will dose them up on the spore-based probiotics in particular at 2 or 3 times the normal dose that we would regularly give them for just maintenance reasons. And then while we're on the trip, we give them a dose of the probiotic with every meal. Because remember, if a bacteria or a virus is going to come in and cause you an illness, it's going to come in typically with the food that you're eating. So if you're also sending in your probiotic with the food, that gives you a good one-to-one defense mechanism every time you're potentially exposed to stuff that could harm you. So it's way better to make sure that you're giving your kids adequate amounts and maybe accidentally give them too much, which there really isn't a too much with many of these probiotics, than to allow them to get sick on a trip or get traveler's diarrhea or pick up some sort of enterovirus that causes significant illness, because it ruins the trip for everybody, right? And especially the poor child that's suffering through it. So you want to do it beforehand, you want to do it during, and you want to do it after you come back for a few days as well, in case there's something sitting there that's waiting for the right opportunity to take over.
Wow, that is incredible. And I think a lot of parents are going to appreciate this, because it's not just hard on the kid, it's really hard on the adult. I mean, having your child get sick if you travel internationally would be scary. I mean, because other things it can lead to, and then the medical system where you travel to may not be at the level of the United States. So
yeah. And one thing I should mention, one thing I've seen in kids that go on mission trips, one of our babysitters just went on a mission trip for a couple of weeks, and she said everybody in her group got sick at some point or the other in trip except for her. So we dosed her up on the probiotics before. We had her take the elevated dose during, and then a little bit after as well. And the problem in many of these places is if you do get sick, you might end up in some doctor's office and they might just hammer you with with antibiotics. And I've been working with a lady to try to repair her gut who had that happen to her in a trip in the Amazon. She picked up something that made her gut disrupted, and then they gave her an IV antibiotic, an oral antibiotic, did all of this stuff that messed her up for the next 2 years. And so it could be a significant issue, and you can up to your probiotics beforehand. And remember, that has to be like a Saccharomyces boulardii type of probiotic or spore-based probiotic, because those are the ones that are really effective at battling other things that are coming in.
Brilliant. Oh my goodness. That was so, so helpful and profound. I really appreciate your knowledge. We're going to talk about the military on our next video. So stay tuned and come back to Microbiome Minute. And if you need a link to Kiran's product, it's going to be in the body of this video. So thank you so much, Kiran, your knowledge, your wisdom. What an incredible share. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.